Now let's talk about who's going to be playing in net for Sidney Crosby and the Penguins this year, because there's one person that certainly won't be, and that is goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic, who was traded to the San Jose Sharks this week in exchange for a 2028 third-round pick. Alex Nedeljkovic came to the city of Pittsburgh 2 years ago in search of a rejuvenation after getting a big contract with the Detroit Red Wings and just crashing and burning in that organization. He comes back to Pittsburgh, and the numbers weren't phenomenal. .898 save percentage, .305 goals against average. His total record was 32, 22, and 12. But what he did do was prove that he could play at the NHL level. And if he has help in front of him, which he didn't have for a large portion of his time in Pittsburgh, he can battle his way to some big-time victories. Look no further than the tail end of his first season with the Penguins, where he narrowly pushed them into the playoffs as the starting goaltender in the month of March. One thing I will say about Alex Nedeljkovic is he seemed to be the consummate professional in a city that kind of moved and shaked him around a little bit, because there was so much uncertainty with Tristan Jarry. There were young players coming up on his heels, especially this past season, and guys like Blomqvist. And he seemed to be able to just keep a professional air about him in the locker room, on the ice, and was able to battle the Penguins to some victories over his 2 years. Of course, he's going to have some tremendous moments. Scoring the goalie goal that he was able to score is always going to stick with him and always going to stick with Penguins fans, but he ends his tenure 2 years after it starts in the city of Pittsburgh, and he heads over to the San Jose Sharks. Now, Horwat, you were in that locker room his first year with the Penguins organization. I wanted to get your thoughts on the Penguins trading Ned.
Off the jump, Ned's a great guy. Off the ice, he always seemed like a great person to interact with and talk to. I said on here before, he also always seemed like a player that you can discuss just sports in general. It doesn't have to just be hockey talk with him. He's the one that showed up, the Parm, Ohio native, showing up with a Myles Garrett jersey during Browns week. Good on him for that sort of, bold-face to bring out your own fandom into Pittsburgh. And that I love things like that. It was so great to see. Interacting with him was always an awesome moment, always a good experience, always brought good quotes, always brought good answers, and was easy to talk to. As for the player, again, solid player. I hope, for the sake of him and the Sharks, I hope he can lead I know they have Askarov down there kind of as their goalie of the future, but I hope Ned can kind of bridge the gap between where that Sharks team is now, that young, exciting team looking to the future, into something great down the line. I'm excited to see what he can do in San Jose. I know it's a bit of a gong show over there, but they're straightening it out pretty quickly. As Friedman also said in 32 Thoughts, the only team rebuilding in the league right now is the Penguins. So that means the Sharks are, at bare minimum, taking steps forward. And I think Nedeljkovic is going to be, I'm going to say, a pretty big part of it for at least the near future. We'll see what happens a couple years down the line. Like I said, Askarov is there and is supposed to be really darn good. But for now, Ned getting a good deserving call for a likely starter job to at least start the year there.
Yeah, now where does that leave the Penguins goaltending situation? With Alex Nedeljkovic out the door, I think it opens the door for two young Penguins goaltenders that have, in their own times, had some very stellar glimpses over the past couple of seasons. Blomqvist, 2 years ago, lit the world on fire, at least lit the AHL world on fire, looking extremely impressive in his first season at that level. And then last year he gets his first taste of NHL action, I should say, and it didn't go well in his 15 games played. I mean, he had moments again, but the overwhelming sentiment was it didn't feel like he was ready for that level. Now, again, here's the asterisk that we always have to put in front of stuff over the past couple of years with goaltenders is they were playing behind one of the worst defensive hockey teams the National Hockey League had to offer. So you do have to take that into account. But as of right now, after this trade, Blomqvist is the number 2 for the Penguins organization. Then there's a guy like Sergei Murashov, who was absolutely electrifying last year in his first season in North America. A combined record in the ECHL and the AHL of 29, 10, and 1 with a .918 save percentage and a .252 goals against average. He was tremendous in the regular season. Now, he did have a rough postseason, 0-4 combined in both the ECHL and the AHL playoffs, but you look at those two goaltenders, And the Penguins have high hopes for both of them, especially a guy in Sergei Murashov, who you would have to imagine is going to get more playing time at the American Hockey League level. But there is now one less hurdle for them to climb to get NHL ice time. So when you look at the Pens, what do you think about these two young goaltenders and the opportunity that they now have in front of themselves in the 25-26 season?
It could be an entertaining opportunity. I feel like it'll start with Jarry and Blomqvist as the 1-2 just to kind of kick off the season. But it wouldn't be all that shocking to see Murashov maybe get a shot later in the year, depending on the direction of the team, which, as we already know, is not upwards, at least for the time being. So maybe they try and get him some NHL reps just to kind of see what he has. It's not necessarily going to be a, hey, we're throwing you in because of X, Y, and Z because we want to give you a run. No, we just want to see how these steps are being taken and how they might translate at the NHL level. It's going to be a period of experiments, I think, for the goalies, if that's sort of the direction they want to go in. I like what it can do, and I think if you're a team like the Penguins trying not to win, yeah, keeping Jarry around is a pretty good move too. But I think this will be a growing year for both Blomqvist and Murashov. It's just going to be a matter of when it happens for Murashov mostly.
Now you look at that goaltending depth chart, and it's Jarry, Blomqvist, Murashov, and then you also got to throw Philip Larson in there somewhere as well. He had himself a good season with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins last year. The question that now comes up in my mind is, could the Penguins bring in another goaltender, maybe a veteran, in case Joe Blomqvist once again doesn't look like he is prepared for the NHL level and they think he needs a little bit more seasoning again at the American Hockey League level? Do you think that that's on the table for Kyle Dubas and company, is bringing in a veteran goaltender to kind of move around as these young goaltenders start to show you where they're going to be at the start of the season?
I don't hate the idea of a young goalie, or not a young goalie, a veteran goalie to sort of step in and act as a third string almost. I think it'd be a good idea for injury's sake as well, because let's say Jarry does get hurt, and then it is down to your two kids essentially.
Yeah.
And that's crucifixion by fire, or whatever the saying is. I know I said it wrong, but you're throwing them to the wolves, and that's
by fire.
You're throwing them to the wolves, and that's not what
Yeah.
you want to do, at least in Murashov's case. I know you kind of already did that with Blomqvist a little bit last season, and it was through injury that he got put in there. So I could see a veteran goalie coming in and acting as a third string. It has to be one that's perfectly okay with that, though. I don't know too many that are out there. I mean, I haven't pulled up the free agent list, but it's for goalies, it's usually never that long. So
it was thin before July 1st. So it's even more thin now.
Yeah. So that'll be tough to find, but I think Kyle Dubas works in mysterious ways. Maybe he knows a guy who can get him a third string goalie that is willing to sort of play that buffer position.
Yeah. Now, baptism by fire is exactly what you were looking for. But then again, considering what the Penguins defense has looked like the last couple of seasons, crucifixion by fire might not be far off either. But no, I think with Tristan Jarry's future kind of up in the air, he's been talked about in trade rumors a lot, and a lot of the end of those conversations are, but there's not really a market for a goaltender that's played some of the worst hockey he's ever played in his career. And also a goaltender that has a track record of being very good in October, November, and December, but being very bad from that point onward, especially once he gets to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Jarry has 3 years remaining at $5.35 million on his contract. If you're the Penguins, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, maybe you let Tristan Jarry just be the guy and get Blomqvist the reps when you can, and say, hey, if he succeeds and he's very good, his trade stock goes up, and we can just ship him out and maybe get out from under that contract. If he stinks, well, the odds are getting a little bit better to get Gavin McKenna. So again, I don't know if that's what the plan is, but if that is the plan, it does make some sense, which is having Tristan Jarry take the brunt of the reps as the starting goaltender in Pittsburgh and kind of supplementing him with these young goaltenders as the opportunity arises for them to help them kind of move along and get some tastes of NHL action. Blomqvist the second time in his career, and potentially guys like Larson and Murashov who will get their first taste.